Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Husker Big Red podcast. I'm Chris Peterson here of HuskerBigRed.com, and with me, as always, is Danny Gillette of thegreatcornholio.org. And we're back for another episode this week. It's been another busy week for the Huskers with MJ Sherman and then Arik Gilbert committing on Thursday. So we're here to break it down, and I guess let's just start with the most recent action with Arik Gilbert, the former five-star tight end, ranked number 5 overall back in 2020. And of course, that's been a long time ago, but Danny, what are your reactions to this pickup for the Huskers?
Immediate, I'm not going to say immediate impact on the field, maybe, because he still has to prove it, but immediate impact in the tight end room. This was a room that, didn't have a lot of, you know, veteran leadership or veteran experience, and you bring in a guy that fresh off, a national championship and two national championships in his career. When I was watching some of his highlights from the Georgia spring game this past season, and he's just very good hands, can make tight contested catches. He is a threat in the red zone, and he's also very fast. He can make things happen after the catch. So a 1-2 punch of hypothetically Fedoni and Gilbert, that doesn't sound bad to me at all.
Yeah, I mean it's a really big addition. I mean he was had over 300 yards receiving as a freshman at LSU, and then it's been he's been in the transfer portal twice now since then. He only had 2 catches in the last 2 years at Georgia. He used 2021 as a basically a redshirt year, so he's got all the potential in the world. I mean, if you look at he was the number 1 tight end, Fedoni was number 2, I believe, in his next class. So I mean, you've got two really elite recruits there. Fedoni's been hurt. Gilbert's had off the field issues. So I mean, there is a lot of talent and upside, in the tight end room all of a sudden. But at the same time, if you look at it, over the past 2 seasons, these guys have caught 2 passes in college football. So I think we also need to temper expectations a bit with Arik Gilbert, and he also has to get approved, for the NCAA for this waiver, which it sounds like Georgia, isn't going to really oppose it or anything. So I'm sure he will get to play for Nebraska next season. But this is a classic guy that Matt Rule has taken guys like this and, developed them into NFL talents. And we'll see if he can do that here with Arik Gilbert. But, of course, he wasn't the only, addition this week, from Georgia. The Huskers getting the edge rusher, MJ Sherman, that came down, just after we recorded our other episode, earlier this week. So, pass rush, and tight end were two of the biggest needs. But, looking back at, MJ Sherman, what were your thoughts on that commitment for Nebraska?
I heard you talk a lot, and rightfully so, about needing another, edge rusher, another pass rusher. Sherman could definitely be that guy, and I think he's very fast, another highly rated recruit. He's explosive, and that just gives Nebraska another, tool defensively to really kind of put pressure on the quarterback. And I think building this sort of Georgia pipeline is a great thing for Nebraska. And I actually saw Arik Gilbert on some mock draft boards with some analysts projecting he was going to leave school and go to the NFL. So, this is a really solid, two solid additions. And quite honestly, Georgia's like B team or second team, so to speak, probably could go toe to toe with, last year's Nebraska team, if we're being completely honest. Because, the tight end that Georgia had, Brock Bowers, not too many people are starting over him. Let's just call it like it is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, he needed some time to, kind of get used to things. And yeah, it's been a deep, tight end room there. With Georgia, they had another tight end that went to Georgia Tech, Seether that Nebraska was interested in. But yeah, Sherman was a big get. I mean, Nebraska lost, their top 3 edge rushers from last season. And, I still think that, it wouldn't be, if they could get more guys in the portal, maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing. But, I think Sherman, Chief Borders, those are 2 guys that can certainly help. They've got athleticism, they can cover a little bit. So I think they're kind of versatile pieces that will fit, in this multiple, 3-3-5 defense. But yeah, I think it's a good move. And Matt Rule, it sounds like he's got, some connections with, Georgia, to the Georgia staff. And if you can get, players from Georgia, I don't think that that's ever a bad thing. And, it's going to create, some competition, and that's something that's needed. But, it's been a good job of addressing, I think, the biggest needs, by Matt Rule and company, this offseason through the transfer portal. So I feel pretty good about, what they've done. I know hopefully they can add some more offensive linemen. I know that you were mentioning to me off the air about that offensive tackle from, was it Florida? Is that what you
Florida,
said?
yeah. Ethan
So,
White.
and he's shown up in the directory now. Is that what you were saying, Danny?
Yeah, I saw him in the directory earlier today, and for all the people who say that the directories are BS, I think there is something to it. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna come here 100%, but I looked at Trey Palmer in the directory. I saw Arik Gilbert in the directory, so there is something to these directories, and call us snoops or whatever, but it's public knowledge, it's public information, so I'd be very excited to add another, tackle to the program. I think I'm pleased with how we've recruited the line and the talent that we have there, but I just want to keep adding more because if we can get, a clean pocket for Jeff Sims, Casey Thompson, whoever, quarterback bottom line, then that makes a world of difference. I mean, just think about what the connection of Casey Thompson and Trey Palmer could have done even more had he had, just a little bit more time to throw.
Yeah, tackle's definitely the biggest need, I think, on the roster. The interior, I feel okay about. Because I do think that Turner Corcoran could, do a better job inside if he needed to. So, I mean, right now he would have to probably be one of your tackles, him or Bryce Benhart starting. So, I think that's a little concerning, but just have to see how things go, I guess, and hopefully some of these other younger tackles can step up too. But I'd be surprised if Nebraska didn't add another offensive lineman, either in this window or after spring ball to see how things kind of shake out with the depth chart. And I think we're going to see some more additions in the spring and probably some more subtractions. I know everybody's been talking about the scholarship numbers, and I know Nebraska's well over that limit, but Matt Rule is not kind of slowing down, and there's 4 recruits coming in this weekend for from the 2023 recruiting class for visits. And frankly, it wouldn't shock me if all 4 of them committed to Nebraska. I mean, if the Huskers want their commitments, then I think the Huskers can get their commitments. Basically, is my point of view. So, yeah, it's a big weekend. We can touch on each of these guys, but Danny, what's your kind of impressions of this quartet of 2023 recruits coming in this weekend?
I mean, I think they're impact playmakers. There was the receiver Jeremiah Charles from Texas. He's a kind of speedy receiver. He can make things happen after the catch. He can play on the outside, and he has a connection with Bob Wager. He played at Arlington Martin, and so I think that's just more bodies in the wide receivers room. And to your point, Chris, people are saying, where are these guys going to go and this and that, and should Matt Rule slow down? No, he shouldn't slow down, because slowing down is what got us into a mess in the first place. Now, granted, that was like not moving, period, slowing down, but slowing down is what got us into the mess in the first place. And then there's Charles, and then there is uh,
Demetrius Bell is going to
Demetrius Bell,
visit.
who I think is going to commit to Nebraska. I don't have any inside knowledge, but all signs are pointing to him committing that way. Bell is a deep threat out of Tennessee. He can really spread the field and provide that explosive playmaking ability. And I also love that we're going into Tennessee and kind of taking a dive, so to speak, in the Georgia, Tennessee, Florida. I like that we're establishing some connections down there, and then we got Bell, we have Martin too, right? The tight end.
Ishmael Smith Flores is
That's
the tight
that's who it
end.
was, Ishmael Smith Flores, and he's another wage year recruit. And I think if you add more bodies to the tight end room, that's a good thing. I'm not sure where Flores will fit, but could you see, in your opinion, a guy like Carney or Rollins moving on after the spring?
It just depends. I think there's a lot of, you can play a lot of guys in your tight end room, with special teams and, with having fullbacks and H-backs and stuff like that. But potentially, I mean, you could potentially see someone moving on. But Smith, Ismail Smith Flores is a guy, that, Wager obviously coached him at Arlington Martin out of Texas. He's 6'5", 210 pounds, and this is his first year playing football. So he's like a basketball guy that's kind of switched over to football. So I think he's got tremendous upside. I really hope that, and I believe Nebraska's going to close the deal with him.
I do too.
I mean, I just and Jeremiah Charles too, who is another kid from Arlington Martin and Bob Wager, and so he's an interesting case too because he's basically a basketball player, 6'2", 170, and then realized he wasn't really going to get recruited as a if you're 6'2", you got to be really damn good to be a D1 basketball player. So he wasn't going to get recruited there. Bob Wager asked him to convinced him to come play football. He averaged 20 yards per reception, caught 5 touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
He has over a 40-inch vertical leap. I mean, he's just a freak. He had 4 slam dunks the other night in basketball. That's why they offered him. And frankly, I mean, you could throw him into the receiver room, but with everything that he has, his leaping ability, everything, I think that he could be a defensive back too. So, I mean, I would look at Jeremiah Charles as more of just, an athlete take as much as anything. And, they can get him at receiver, but if it doesn't work out or if the room's too crowded, he could easily flip, over to the other side, kind of like Tommy Hill did last year.
And they have flexibility, like you kind of just alluded to, at the wide receiver position. That's not something that we've always had, and it's nice to have flexibility because there's a lot of bodies, a lot of options in the wide receiver room. And Charles is just he's so fast. I was watching him the other day actually, and especially if you give him like a slant route or a crossing route, he can make things happen after the catch. He turns upfield really quickly, and man, I mean, I would love to see that speed at the wide receiver room, but that's speed could also be used in the secondary room. So we'll see. I think he would be a good asset to have either way.
And then Sua Lefotu, hopefully that's pronouncing the name right, probably not, but defensive lineman out of California who visited. He released a top 8 earlier this week, and like some of the top teams are Washington State, Arizona State, Nevada. He's obviously visiting Nebraska this weekend, so I mean, I don't have a crystal ball prediction, but if I did have one, I would put one in for him, which he has started to get expert predictions now, which all 4 of these guys are. And he's another guy. When you play an odd front, you need big guys who can basically take on a gap. He's 6'4", 285 pounds. He's ranked in the 1200s, so I mean, it's not like he's 4-star recruit or anything. But it's another solid addition. And I guess the thing is, if Nebraska was worried about the scholarship numbers, I don't think that they would waste the time and money to bring these guys in for these official visits. So unless, there's some pause on their part to commit to Nebraska, which at this point I don't see. I mean, like, Ishmael Smith Flores and, I'm blanking on the other guy's name, Charles, they don't have a ton of other offers right now. I mean, Smith Flores did visit Rutgers, and so he, but Charles is Nebraska's only Division I offer. I mean, not Division I, but FBS offer, I should say. So I feel like as long as Nebraska wants these guys and makes the push and the visit, nothing crazy happens on the visit, I feel like there's a chance for 4 commitments to come out of this weekend. I really do.
I would rather us recruit a lot and have too many kids than not recruit anything and leave the cupboards bare, because that's what we have been doing the past couple seasons, particularly in terms of the defensive line room and up until more recently the wide receiver room. So I would rather us over recruit than under recruit, because under recruiting can severely damage a program, and we've seen some of that in the past. But I think could have the potential to be another big weekend for Nebraska football, and I really am interested to see how some of these position battles play out. I really am. Specifically the wide receiver room and the tight end room, just in terms of, can the 3 of Fedoni, Rollins, and Carney, can they show anything this season when healthy? So we'll see. I mean,
And
but
don't forget Nate Borkature either.
oh yeah, Nate Borkshire. How could I forget? But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting to see who goes. Actually, I think, because I do think there's gonna be some attrition, but we'll see.
Yeah, I do know something that's interesting that I read this morning from Sean Callahan in the Tunnel Talk this week was he got some quotes from Niles Paul, who actually the former Husker and played in the NFL and all that, was a wide receiver and tight end. And at any rate, he actually had seen Thomas Fidone and didn't know anything about his injury history or anything, and saw him working out, and he compared him to George Kittle, which, I mean, that's basically the type of comparisons Fedoni was getting out of high school. So I mean, the thing that I am interested in with these two guys, I think there's a ton of potential here to go two tight ends, and you could really have, I know Nebraska said they want to huddle, and I'm sure they will do that quite a bit. But I mean, they'll have a lot of opportunities. I feel like, to go tempo, because man, if you have your come out, you have 11 personnel, right? And if these two, the key is these guys have to be able to block. Because if Nebraska can come out in 11 personnel with Fedoni and Gilbert blocking, and then run the football, and then like go hurry up and get you out of like your your nickel just in your base personnel, and then you have to try to match up with those two tight ends who could run like wide receivers, who are 6'4", 6'5", and then you have the other receivers on the outside. I feel like Nebraska could create a ton of matchup nightmares, and Gilbert has seen time as a receiver too. So I mean, he could split out wide. You talk about throwing the ball up to those guys in the red zone. So it creates a lot of exciting possibilities, but they have to be able to block it. But I feel like, coming from Georgia, like, I feel like that's already going to be instilled in Gilbert. And, obviously Fedoni, I don't know about, he's always known a little bit more of as a pass catcher as well. But if those guys can really work on those blocking skills and be effective in the run game too, then this offense could be really dangerous with them both on the field.
And in the SEC, you kind of have to know how to block. So I'm not too worried about Gilbert's blocking prowess. But man, you just mentioned it, Fedoni, Gilbert, the wide receivers, and then don't sleep on the running back room either. I mean, this offense could be the most balanced in terms of weapons that we've had in a long time. And I think, not for nothing, but I think Tony White will handle a lot of the recruiting duties out west. So I'll be interested to see who he can continue to land and how much of an impact he can make out there. Tony Tuioti, when he was here, he had the Western region, and he recruited, you know, decent players, but they just never saw the field. So I'm kind of wondering how our ventures out west will go. I mean, I'm not gonna make any guarantees or something, but I have a feeling that this particular Florida group, for example, will do better than the previous regime's Florida group. And so hopefully White's potential West pipeline will fare a little bit better than our previous one 2 or 3 years ago.
And one thing we should note on there is a key 2024 visitor coming in this weekend, Aaron Hampton, wide receiver, cornerback, top 100 kid. He actually did get crystal ball from Brian Christopherson of the Husker 24/7, but he visited Alabama recently, and so Alabama, I think, is kind of taking over the lead in this recruitment. I know there was, he was kind of tweeting at Dylan Raiola and all that type of stuff. So, we'll see how that goes. But still a big visit to get him on campus. And, we'll see if, they can move the needle with him a little bit. But, I think that's it as far as 2024 this weekend. I mean, they'll have to, obviously the coaches got out this week, and, they made some new offers, and there's lots of stuff kind of going on. But, it'll be interesting to see who they start getting on campus, more and more from that class. But, he's certainly one of them. We saw Matt Rule go out and visit, Raiola last week. And it
What do
seems
you think
like,
our chances are?
I mean, I think Nebraska's number 2 right now. Honestly, that's how he mentioned Oregon and USC along with Georgia, and I just don't see him going to USC with Malachi Nelson
I
committed
don't.
there
I
already.
don't either.
Yeah, it's so Oregon. I could though. Oregon is interesting because they did sign a pretty solid quarterback in the 2023 class, Austin Novosad. They flipped him from Baylor just at the very after they lost their 5-star Dante Moore, who went to UCLA. So I definitely feel like Bo Nix is going to be out after this year, so they could definitely sell playing to him. And Dan Lanning is a hell of a recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
So and he's got that tie to Georgia. He probably knows Dylan from when he was on staff at Georgia. I mean, that's kind of how far back these things tend to go. But like I said, I would put it Nebraska and Georgia in the top 2, and I think Nebraska's got a shot. I think they've got make sure they get him on campus, and then they've got to probably have some success on the field. But I give that pause because I don't think Dylan Raiola is going to be he's going to be committed before the 2023 season starts. I mean, I would be shocked if he wasn't. I'm guessing he'll take his visits, this spring, this summer, and kind of like Arch Manning, I'm expecting him at the very latest to pull the trigger in like July or something. So, I mean, it'll be nice for Nebraska to be in the right direction, but I just don't think that's kind of one disadvantage is I don't think that they're going to have that time with him to say, hey, like this is the product we have on the field, unless they're able to flip him or something late. Michigan actually is trying to get in with Dylan Raiola too. I think that's more of a ploy because they're trying to get another kid to commit, and so I think they're trying to put pressure on Jaden Davis, who's like the number 3 quarterback, and then they've been kind of trending in that direction. So there's a lot of balls up in the air with the 2024 quarterback class, and there's a lot of dominoes that fall. But I would give it less than a 50-50 chance for Nebraska. I'd say like 40-60 he goes to Georgia.
Yeah, and honestly, it would be hard to say no to Georgia. Back-to-back national champions. Kirby Smart's building something very special. So I honestly would love him here, but like I've said before, I don't really see him coming here. I know Nebraska fans get excited, but I don't see him coming here. And quite honestly, we don't have the winning product on the field that he can turn to and say, okay, this is a winning program right now. This is something I want to, continue and keep contributing to. We're starting from scratch. Maybe if a really good quarterback prospect comes along in a couple of years and, there's a, 2 or 3 or 4 consecutive winning seasons, then maybe we would have a better shot with a, top tier quarterback. But for right now, I mean, it's hard to say no to Georgia, let's be honest here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and yeah, Nebraska doesn't have, that development really to sell. I think the X factor for me is, one, how's he going to connect with the coaching staff? And I think Matt Rule did a good job, when he went out and visited them. I know Marcus Satterfield went out and did a visit with him. So, I think that those guys have made positive impressions, on the Raiolas, for whatever that's worth. And I do think that there's this X factor of like how much does Dylan Raiola, really personally care and like love Nebraska football? Like I know his dad played there, and I'm sure that they've like watched a lot of games growing up. I know he's been to a lot of games. I mean, all that type of stuff. Like, so does that connection to Nebraska, does that mean something more than Georgia? Can Nebraska like get itself to a point where it's almost level with Georgia, but that's kind of the thing that can sway it for Nebraska? I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see if they get him on campus, and you can go from there. But that's the first step. But I think that Matt Rule at least has Nebraska, in the game right now, and that's the biggest thing that you can say.
Yeah, and I think, his personality makes him a very good seller of things, seller of this program. And, I think this coaching staff has also done a really good job of selling the program. I mean, look at how quickly they've kind of made the 2023 class in just a matter of weeks. And, I think we will get a lot of quality 2024 recruits, but you can only do so much in recruiting without doing anything on the field. And, right now, I think we got to show results on the field. And especially it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. I mean, Cormani McLean just slipped to Colorado, so there's a lot of moving parts. And I think I'll just say it right here. I'm not sure I buy the Colorado hype, but there's no denying that Coach Prime is landing impact players. I mean, Travis Hunter, Cormani McLean, that's a very good corner duo right there.
Yeah, and Shadur Sanders is pretty darn good too. And look, they're gonna be a solid team. I think they're gonna be better than people expect. I think he's gonna have success there, and that's why I don't think he's gonna be there very long, because I think he's gonna win some games. It wouldn't shock me like if Colorado was in a bowl game this year. It really wouldn't. Um, and it wouldn't shock me if in 2 years from now we're talking about Prime coaching somebody in the SEC, or you know what I
Yeah.
mean. Like I know people were talking about Florida State, but that's not happening because that team is freaking loaded for next season. So they're
Yeah.
unless they fall in their Mike Norvell and the Knowles like fall on their face next year, then maybe. But the thing, Prime's doing a good job recruiting, and hell, I mean, he's an NFL superstar. If you're a cornerback, why wouldn't you want to play for him? I just don't like. I hate the reality TV show
Yeah.
stuff. Like that Tim Brewster video was just cringeworthy. Like
Yeah, it was.
why are you recording yourself having these kids stand up and stand? It's like you're obviously, I mean, if you have to go into a room and like make people like act like you have authority instead of just naturally having authority, like it's just, I don't think Matt Rule has to do that corny shit. And I know that Colorado fans want to make fun of his emojis or whatever, but at least he's out recruiting. And I know that Prime is doing that too, but it's like, why do you have to make everything into like a reality video? Like it's just, I
It's
don't need
annoying.
this. Yeah, and then yesterday he had he had a video where Prime was telling the team how they had all the women staffers in Colorado lined up in front of the team, and he was talking to them how they were gonna speak to women. And I mean, yeah, obviously you have to respect women in the workplace and all that type of stuff, but it's like, why does this conversation need to be recorded? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like you could have done all that without the cameras, and it
Yeah, I
probably would
totally
have
agree.
been. And then it's like you're just throwing these ladies up, and it's like I just don't like it. And it's like, are you going to be a football program or a reality TV star? Like, what's the deal here?
And quite honestly, if I want to see a Colorado video, get Tim Brewster off my screen. I don't want to see him.
Yeah,
I want to see Prime. I mean, let's be real here. I want to see Prime, and I do like that whole stint about this is how you respect women. I totally like. I'm totally on board with that. Don't get me wrong,
yeah,
but like that's just like, I mean, filming it and
yeah. It was
I
just
don't know.
cringe.
I
It
don't
was
know.
just
Yeah, I don't know.
it was just cringy. I just didn't. I felt awkward for the women too.
I know.
It just was weird. And yeah, I think Tim Brewster is like, he's like, I'm going to be the next reality star after Prime leaves. So I don't know what his deal is, but
Tim
what a
Brewster also sucked as a head coach,
yeah,
so
yeah, he did. Well, but if you can act like you're a head coach, maybe that means something. I don't know.
right, Scott?
Yeah.
Ugh.
But yeah, it's gonna be a fun a 7-8 months leading up to this Nebraska Colorado game. I feel like the social media rivalry is already taken off quite a bit.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun couple months leading up to the Minnesota game too. I'm excited for that. Like those first two games, I think will tell a lot about the program. And I know it's a new staff and this, that, and the other thing, but those are two really big games. And all eyes will be on that Colorado game. I mean, I can't forget the last time we played in Boulder. We were winning. Steven Montez was the quarterback for Colorado. Our defense just looked absolutely our defense looked like me after Thanksgiving, in a coma, unable to move, just absolutely gassed, and they lost, I believe, in the fourth quarter, which
Yeah.
sounds really familiar. But I think, yeah, they lost in the fourth quarter. Bunch of Nebraska fans came to support, and I just don't want a repeat of that because that was a heartbreaking loss.
Yeah, that was another one of those games that, it was like could have been a defining type of win. Like it was Frost's second season and it was all supposed to go well. And they got like a 17-point lead and then
They
pissed
did.
it away. For
They
the
did.
second straight year in a row, they pissed it away against Colorado, which was just really, really annoying. So yeah, I hope that doesn't happen again. But can you imagine, like, just looking ahead? I mean, I know we're a long way from this. I'm not making any predictions, but what if Nebraska comes out and beats Minnesota and Colorado? Just like
That'd be nice.
people are going to be just talking about the national champion. I mean, literally, Nebraska fans are going to be like, "We're going for 6."
When's the
Like,
last time we've had a 2-0 start to the season?
oh my, probably 16 when Riley's the one good season Mike Riley had, I think, which was 2016, or maybe was that 2015.
I'm gonna look that up, but then there's even more interesting plot lines on the schedule as we face old friend DeColdis Crawford in what is it, week 3 or 4 with Louisiana Tech.
I don't quite remember, but yeah, I forgot about that one. That'll be a maybe he can still get some traction out of his NIL deal if he comes back to the state one time.
Wonder how much he made off of that.
Yeah, I
I
don't know.
wonder.
It's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure. Um,
2016, won. Nebraska won every game up until October 29th, and then they suffered their first loss. So,
to Wisconsin, right? Just crushed us.
yep. Let's see, 23. Hold on. 17-23, so not a crushing.
Oh,
But then
okay.
the week after that, which I bet you're thinking of, Ohio State, we lost 62-3.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
That was a good Ohio State team too.
yeah,
I'm
that
not gonna
was a
lie.
really good Ohio State team. Yeah, that was when I think everybody kind of realized like, oh, Mike Riley really isn't that great of a coach. And then the next year he really sucked, and then Scott Frost really sucked. So here we are.
I have to say, watching Ohio State crush us, like, has not been fun as a Nebraska fan, but as a football fan, because I remember when Ohio State came in 2019 for College Game Day. College Game Day was there, and Justin Fields and J.K. Dobbins, oof, they absolutely ran all over our defense, and Chase Young was coming, off the edge, and it was like, as a football fan, I loved it, but as a Nebraska fan, I was embarrassed that College Game Day was there to see that because there was so much hype going in that game, and yet we couldn't deliver. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Matt Rule will change that. I really think
Yeah,
he's going to, though. I think I've said it before. I think we're going to win
yeah.
7 or 8 games. I'm not at the get out of here with the 6. We need 8, But
This
actually,
is
I'd
a
be
very friendly schedule,
it
honestly.
it is, and the Big Ten's going to be tough though. But the Big Ten West next year really is wide open. I mean, I don't think that anybody's debating that aspect of it. I think it's probably going to be the last year of the Big Ten West. I mean, as we know it, because obviously USC and USC and UCLA are coming in, and I just really hope they get rid of divisions or I don't know what to do, frankly, with the with these 16 team leagues and like because I just if the Big Ten, the only bad downside of going away from divisions is like, so what if it's Ohio State and Michigan, so they're just going to play 2 weeks in a row for the championship? I mean, how stupid is that? So and that's not just a Big Ten thing, but I mean, we saw that in the Big 12 championship game, and we see all these rematches, and I don't know if that's a good thing for college football, but it'll be interesting to see what it all looks like for Nebraska. But I mean, in terms of this upcoming season, I mean, I don't see. I know, Wisconsin and Luke Fickle are going to be there. I mean, I'm sure Purdue's hoping they're going to be around. Illinois, but they obviously have a new quarterback and they don't have Chase Brown anymore. So, I mean, and Illinois got a couple of dudes that are getting picked pretty high in the draft at cornerback. So, I mean, they're
Well,
losing
their
probably
corners
like,
were really, really good. So
yeah, I think both of them. Or I mean, there's a couple of them that are getting projected really high. So I just think that that's going to be tough losses for them to overcome. And Purdue's, losing their quarterback. I know they got Hudson Card from Texas, so he's pretty good. But it's going to be crazy because Wisconsin, Nebraska, Purdue, Illinois are all going with basically transfer quarterbacks. I mean, unless Casey Thompson, wins. But it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, Northwestern I think is not very good, but I
no, they
never
weren't
can.
good. They weren't very good last year. Let's be
I
honest.
know, but we still lost to him. So
I
I mean,
know, I know.
just
But
kills
no, I
me.
think even Minnesota, like, we always made Tanner Morgan look like Joe Montana.
Yeah,
But I think, their backup quarterback is also good as well. Whether or not that's because our defense is just so bad, um, is one thing. But I think their quarterback that they brought in, I forget his name, um, he played very well against us, and he had a bit more mobility. And we used to struggle with mobile quarterbacks. I'm hoping that's not the case again this year. But I think Minnesota will be a challenge as well. I know they've lost Mo Ibrahim, if I'm correct. Is that
yeah,
is that right? Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
that's a big loss right
that's a
there.
big loss. Yeah, and
Thank
I mean
goodness.
that's the thing. You kind of mentioned it, but people do. I feel like are overlooking Nebraska's running back room. I mean, Anthony Grant had behind an offensive line that wasn't in a great position and didn't run the ball enough, but he still almost had 1,000 yards. And then AJ Allen, I think is going to be a big time player. I think both of those guys are going to have, I mean, I don't want to say they could both get 1,000 yards, but they have that kind of potential. I mean, if AJ Allen got enough carries, he could absolutely get 1,000 yards. And if add a little bit behind this offensive line and you think about the receiving weapons and the tight end weapons, I mean, this offense does have the potential to be pretty explosive.
Oh yeah, and it has the ability to kind of control the pace of the game as well, because what Mark Whipple didn't do correctly last season was pace.
Yeah.
And he just was go, go, go all the time, and I don't think you're gonna see that in a Marcus Satterfield offense. I think it's gonna be a bit slower, which, quite frankly, it needs to be, if nothing else, to give the defense some rest. And I also think we're gonna see a lot more running the football. So I am optimistic. I know there were some questions about Satterfield coming in, but I am optimistic about what he can do, and I think um, he's gonna be surrounded by a lot of playmakers. So We'll see what he does, but I'm very confident. I think at least we'll run the football more, which we just didn't last year for whatever reason. So I guess because Chuba Purdy wasn't a running back, really, we
Yeah.
didn't run the football a ton last year.
I think Matt Rule is gonna run the football a lot, and the offensive line. Hoping I feel like they'll play better, and yeah, I mean I don't know, we'll see, but I really feel like that Matt Rule's gonna surprise people with this team. I think he's gonna get the most out of players that that even a lot of us as fans have just basically written off. I mean, I think he's gonna have a massive impact, and we're gonna. I think like when we're sitting here next year at this time we're going to be like, oh, that's why Nebraska's paying Matt Rule $9 million. I mean, he's a great recruiter, but he's a great coach too, and that also I mentioned this before, but that goes to developing his assistant coaches. I think he's a guy that's proven he can develop assistants. I mean, he's got guys that were on his staff that have been head coaches elsewhere that he plucked from high school staffs before. So I think he's just making a lot of really great moves, and I think we're going to be proud of this football program next season. That's one prediction that I have going for 2023.
And I don't think it's too far of a stretch, any of those. I think, I think there is a lot of hope surrounding this program. And I think, Matt Rule understands what he needs to do. And, I think obviously the games have to be played on the field, but I really do think the talent is there to succeed. And I think the coaching staff is, going to be, a key part of, what this team does. And last season we had 5 or 7 whatever different coaches with 7 different agendas, I think. Yeah, we really did because you
Yeah.
had Raiola trying to figure out his line, and you had Mark Whipple who did him no favors by, not doing the thing that they did best, which was run the football and run blocking. Then you had Mickey just trying to make, chicken salad out of chicken shit with the wide receivers, and then you had Scott Frost at the bar, so they were all over the place. And and so it'll be nice to have what appears to be a cohesive staff. I don't think there'll be too many egos, and I'm just hoping. I'm praying and hoping that this is the year we get something going. I really am.
At least the bowl game, but at any rate, to digress, and before we wrap it up, we probably should touch on basketball a little bit. I know we
Yeah.
haven't touched a whole lot on the Huskers, but they did get a big win this week over Ohio State on Wednesday night. It was an ugly game. It was like 23-22 at halftime or whatever it was. I don't know, but the Huskers found a way in the second half. Sam Griesel had a really good night. 15 points. I think he had 7 rebounds, like 4 assists. Denham Dawson came in and really played solid defense with, Gary being out for the rest of the season now. So Nebraska's playing Penn State this weekend on the road. They're a team that they shoot the hell out of the ball. They shoot a lot of 3-pointers. I can't remember all the guys on their roster, but that's basically what they live and die by, the three. So if Nebraska's defense can keep doing a job on the 3-point shooters, which I feel like they've done pretty well at that, they're going to have a
Yeah.
chance. And they're 10-9 right now, 3-5, and I don't know. I feel like if I was going to grade this team and Fred Hoiberg, I feel like I would at least give him a solid B. I feel like Fred, he subbed out. He put Kaisei Tominaga in the starting lineup over Wiltshire. He put Dawson in over.
Which was a good move, I think, because
Yeah.
Wilcher's struggled this year, and it's unfortunate to see.
And he made the move for Dawson over Breidenbach. Not that Breidenbach hasn't played well, but it just wasn't, that matchup wasn't going to fit Wilhelm Breidenbach. It was going to put him in a tough spot defensively, and so I thought that Fred made 2 really good moves, and he trusted the freshman Lawrence hit the big 3. So I thought Fred had a really good night coaching at any rate.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the roster, you're seeing players like Denham Dawson kind of really start to emerge, and that's good for the future of the program. And at the same time, I worry about losing a guy like Greasel or Walker next year. I wish we had them both for another year, but it'll be interesting to see who steps up in the absence of Juan Gary. I mean, that is a I'm not going to say it's a monumental loss, but it's a pretty big loss because he gave energy to the program, and he was a very good mid-range shooter and a very good defender. So I'm just happy that we beat Ohio State, second time in less than a year that we beat Ohio State. And if you recall, we almost beat them in January. We actually had the lead It was a Sunday game, and we almost beat them then too, but um, unfortunately, we couldn't close the game. So good to see us kind of really, kind of slog our way through Big Ten play, and it is a slog. These are tough games, and Nebraska has been able to hold their own, with the exception of maybe Illinois. I've been impressed with the effort so far, and Purdue or Penn State is going to be another tough one. So if they can keep the game close and continue their solid perimeter defense with their rotations, um, and quite honestly, if I'm Fred Hoiberg, I wouldn't worry so much about the inside. If they get inside baskets, that's fine, but just defend the perimeter, don't foul, and maybe they'll have a shot against Penn State, and we beat Penn State, then things are looking promising for sure.
I know Penn State's not a great 2 point defensive team, especially they don't allow a ton of. I think that's one of their main focuses is not allowing a ton of post ups. So we'll see what Derek Walker does, but he scores against everybody. So as long as Derek Walker gets some touches, like he's going to score points. He's like a machine. But yeah, losing Gary does really hurt because he's such a versatile piece. But at least he can come back next year. I feel bad for him though, because this is like the second time he's had a season-ending injury. Um, but yeah, it's winning Big Ten games on the road is very difficult. And I remember after we beat Minnesota, and I wrote a post at HuskerBigRed.com and about how it was a huge win, and some people kind of ridiculed me for that. But any win I feel like for Nebraska right now on the road in the Big Ten is a big win, because if you get if you can win, they've got one right now. If you can win 2 or 3 on the road and then just, try to win the rest of your games at home, then you're going to end up with a pretty solid record. So hopefully they can find a way to steal one at Penn State. I feel like this is going to be one of their best chances because the schedule is not easy. And there isn't an easy night in the Big Ten at all. I mean, every single team can beat you. And I mean, Minnesota's the worst team, and they're not a bad team at all. I mean, comparatively to everybody else in college basketball.
Yeah, and this is one of the tougher basketball conferences. I'd say probably the toughest, because the ACC, I mean, you're starting to see, the bottom and the top kind of separate themselves. And, in the Big Ten, sure, you have the top and the bottom, teams, but all those teams will play hard on any given night. So, you know, I'm pleased with the effort that the program has shown so far, and there's definitely some, um, likability about this team, and they play hard and stuff. My only worry is that with these transfers, Greasel, Walker will be gone next year. How will they kind of bounce back from that? Because if you take those two out of the equation in a game, then it severely hampers Nebraska basketball. And I'm curious to see what happens next year when those two are gone.
Yeah, I mean, Fred's going to have to, point guard and the post position. I feel like, the hope is that Breidenbach will be able to step in and be a starting center next year. I think that's his more natural position is the 5, but we'll see if he's ready. If not, I would expect him to do the transfer portal, and I would fully expect a transfer portal point guard next year. And but hey, man, you never know. Like Penn State, look at it back to Penn State just to talk about them for a second. I mean, they've got a lot of guys out of the Jalen Pickett, Seth Lundy. So that there's a lot of teams that are finding success in the portal, and Pickett's going to be a big key. He's averaging 17 points a game, 7 rebounds, 7 assists for Penn State. So I mean, he's going to be a guy that they're going to have to rein in. But really, if you look at their lineup, there's only one guy that plays semi regularly that is above 6'6". So I mean that could be a big advantage for Derek Walker. I feel like that could be an advantage for Greasel. And honestly, I think whoever plays better out of that Jalen Pickett, Sam Greasel point guard matchup, I think that's going to be who wins the game, because it seems like when Sam Greasel is able to, have those games where he's scoring like 13, 15 points and getting like 5, 6 rebounds, 5, 6 assists, that's when Nebraska's at their best. And if he can do that and play really good defense on Penn State's best player, then I think the Huskers are going to have a puncher's chance to win tomorrow on Saturday. So, 11:15 Central Time tip on Big Ten Network, not BTN Plus. So actually get to watch it.
Is it 11:15? I thought it was a two. I thought for me it was a 2:15 start. Let me see.
You're right.
Uh,
You're right. No, I am. You're right. I forgot that they had it in my time zone. So yeah, you're right. It is going to be
Oh.
it is a 1:15 Central Time. My bad.
Okay. So now
I
we're
was sure.
entering 3 different time zones. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep. No,
we're
that makes sense though. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I think Greasel also does a good job of controlling the tempo of the game, and Walker does that well too when they give him the ball inside, and he can work a little bit inside. So I'm interested to see how this game plays out. I definitely think they have a chance. Like I said before, the only game where they really kind of didn't play well or were blown out of it immediately was Illinois, and maybe another game at the beginning of the season. I can't remember, but
yeah, they had one, that St. John's one
St.
got
John's,
kind of
yeah,
ugly, but they were in it for a half though. So
yeah. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think this is another big game for this team, and if they win, then they'll really start trending in the right direction.
then we're gonna start checking the bracketology. No, I'm just kidding. But
Yeah, one day.
maybe the NIT bracketology, but that would still be a big step for this team. So I would
Yeah,
definitely take that.
and it would be huge for Fred too.
Yeah, it would. So that'll we'll keep talking about that in the coming weeks and days, but we'll be back on Monday, hopefully, talking about some commitments over the weekend from Nebraska football, and maybe we'll have some more transfer portal additions. So make sure that you guys like the video, get into the comment section, let us know what you think about MJ Sherman and Arik Gilbert and some of these 2023 commitments coming in this weekend, and or recruits coming in this weekend, not commitments yet. Don't
Well,
count
we don't know.
don't count our eggs before they hatch. But yeah, but let us know what you think about these guys, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our podcast episodes, or our other Husker updates. And also make sure that you're checking out huskerbigred.com and thegreatcornholio.org so you can find a lot of our written work on the Huskers as well. And we hope to see you around, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.